Who cares if the NFL draft is over? It's a special kind of mock draft Monday. That and more on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
You are Locked On Buccaneers, your daily Tampa Bay Buccaneers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, and welcome to the Locked On Bucs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are your daily podcast covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Please subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you always get the latest episodes when they drop. I am James Yarcho, deputy editor of SB Nation's BucsNation.com, joined by my awesome co-host, Mr. David Harrison, who covers your Buccaneers for Sports Illustrated's BucsGameDay.com. And of course, you can follow everything on Twitter at Locked On Bucs, at JArco_Bucs, and at DHarrison82.
And we thank you for making Locked On Bucs first listen or your first view today and every day. And a special thank you goes out to all the everydayers joining us here for this first of 5 episodes this week. And it is Mock Draft Monday because the NFL draft, ladies and gentlemen, is only about 50 weeks away. So there's no better time to get prepared than today. And
That's
in
right.
Pro Football Focus's way too early 2024 mock draft, written by Mr. Max Chadwick, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select North Carolina quarterback Drake Maye, James, with the 5th overall pick in 2024. Now, to give a little bit of context, the 5th overall pick in the 2023 NFL draft was earned by the Denver Broncos, who went 5-12. Now, it belonged to the Seahawks because comically, the Denver Broncos traded a whole lot of stuff to get that 5-win record. But yeah, Denver Broncos, 5th overall pick, 5-12. What do you think about the top 10 draft pick projection, which, by the way, before you go hard at Max or at PFF, is based off of Super Bowl 58 betting odds, at least at the time of the writing? And I will tell you, I checked FanDuel's, and currently the Buccaneers are actually 4th worst. So technically, if we were going off of FanDuel odds, PFF would actually be 1 pick too late. So what do you think of essentially, what do you think of the doubt out there from the betting people, the national media on the Buccaneers, and the expectation that they're going to finish this year with the top 5 pick?
I guess in some aspects I get it. In other aspects, I don't. Now, let's just say hypothetically the Bucs do end up with the number 5 pick, and hypothetically they do draft Drake Maye. It's pretty epic to have the number 5 overall pick in back-to-back years end up going on to the Pro Football Hall of Fame when their careers are done, which is exactly what would happen with Buccaneer Drake Maye and Seahawk Devin Witherspoon. But I get it. There's a lot of trepidation, a lot of questions, a lot of doubt surrounding the Todd Bowles coached Buccaneers, the new offensive coordinator, the question mark at quarterback, whether it's Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask, the question mark surrounding an offensive line. There's a lot of doubt, and the Buccaneers have a lot of talent and a lot of opportunity to prove those doubters wrong.
Oh.
I don't think they're going to end up with the top 5 pick, but I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. This is not an outlier.
That you're wrong? No, that is not an outlier. The fact that the Buccaneers are projected to have a top 5 pick absolutely is wrong. Look, the Buccaneers, listen, I don't like to get into like off-season like statements of certainty and all these other things, but here's what, and I don't even need to say this to Bucs fans. Like, Bucs fans, you know what I'm talking about. But this team legitimately got Tom Brady's worst season. Like, the only season that Tom Brady had worse than this last one from a performance standpoint was the year he tore his ACL in week 1. That's the only season in Tom Brady's career that a team got worse production. And yes, of course, we give Tom a bye on that week or that year of not doing anything because he tore his ACL. Speaking of torn ACLs, they also lost the heart of their offensive line in the first somewhat contactful training camp practice of the year, right? Not only that, but you lose your all-pro caliber, I will say that till the day I die, all-pro caliber left guard, Ali Marpet, to retirement that offseason. which then trickle down economics down to Donovan Smith, who once again cannot play left tackle without an all-pro caliber left guard next to him, which is what we saw before Allie moved over to the left side, right? So you have that. You have Chris Godwin coming off of an ACL, coming back too early as far as I'm concerned. And look, he made it through the season for the most part, and I'm happy for him, but I still think that he came back too early. You've got a pass rush that's completely non-existent, like a 2020 pass rush, completely non-existent. You lose Shaq Barrett in the midst of those struggles. You lose your best pass rusher on top of it. Your nose tackle becomes your leading sack getter, and you have the NFL's worst rushing attack. All of those things, by the way, a first-year head coach, like 4-year franchise. I know Todd obviously has experience, but your franchise first-year head coach, not even coaching with the staff that he wants, not even coaching with the staff that he picked. You have all of these things going on, and the Buccaneers won 8 games. You know what I'm saying? Like, there is talent on this. Like, I feel like this is first-year Brady all over again. And honestly, what this is the dark side of the Brady effect, right? The positive side of the Brady effect is max out on primetime games. Everybody loves you. You're the betting favorite. Nobody counts you out anymore, all that stuff. The negative side, we've been talking about this, right? Mike Evans has like one of the most difficult records to break in his hands. He's continually extending this record. Nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it, right? It's the negative side of the Tom Brady effect. We were shocked at the lack of Pro Bowlers, lack of all pro players during Brady's tenure with the Buccaneers Super Bowl season, right? Why? It's the dark side of the Brady effect. As soon as Brady leaves, your roster is just devoid of talent. Mm-hmm. And it's not true. It's just not true. This roster is not devoid of talent. Now, are they having to repair some things? Yes, obviously. Do they need to figure out the left side of their offensive line? Yes, they do. But here's my thing. If you get average or better quarterback play from this team, which I think is basically what the Buccaneers got last year, you're an 8-win team. You're an 8-win team. Like, this division didn't, you've got a number 1 overall pick quarterback. Fantastic. How many times does a number 1 overall quarterback team have a top 5 pick the very next year? Because you're not a very good team. Now, I understand they had the number 9. They traded up to the number 1. I get all that, right? But the bottom line is the Carolina Panthers, not a very good team when they came into this thing. So I'm not offended, but it's just a little ridiculous to me that the Buccaneers are put this low. I wish I could just bet on, no, they're not going to be as bad as you say they are. Like, I wish I could just bet on that. Unfortunately, I can't just bet on that. And I don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl, but that's a whole different discussion. But James, speaking of Drake Maye, because that's really what this discussion is supposed to be about, I apologize. I did not see that coming. Here's what Max Chadwick wrote in his too early mock draft. Quote, the Buccaneers find their new franchise quarterback in May, who was the most valuable player in college football last season, according to our wins above average metric. Again, that's PFF. His 45 big-time throws were 10 more than the next closest FBS quarterback, and he tied for second among all quarterbacks with 56 combined rushing first downs and touchdowns, end quote. So let's turn the page on this thing. If it's Drake Maye, let's forget all the rest of the stuff. But if Drake Maye were to join this team next year, he's not Caleb Williams, what do you think?
I would be totally fine with it. I think Drake Maye shows a lot of promise. Now, let's see him get through another season in college, right? Because we've seen guys in the past that showed a lot of promise, and then all of a sudden they return for another year. They regress a little bit. Their draft stock falls. Any number of, God forbid, he gets a huge season-ending injury. He tears his ACL. He ruptured his Achilles. He gets his shoulder blown out, something like that. Obviously, we don't want to see that happen, but I think Drake Maye has all of the makings to be a very successful NFL quarterback. If the chips were to fall this way, I would be totally on board with the Buccaneers being able to draft a quarterback like him.
Yeah, no, I'm actually a really big Drake Maye fan. As coincidence would have it, I happened to have a good amount of conversations last year with former North Carolina quarterback Sam Howell. And a good amount of those conversations were about Drake, about how he did last weekend, about who he is as a person, about stories, all those other things. So I actually happen to have kind of gotten to know about, right, Drake Maye. I don't know him, but I've gotten to know about him. And yeah, I would absolutely be okay with the Buccaneers adding Drake Maye to the roster if they found themselves in need of a quarterback next year. But before we get to that NFL draft, we have to get through this NFL season. The schedule is supposed to come out this week. James and I are going to make some projections about what we think that schedule will contain. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And today's episode of Locked On Bucs is brought to you by Built Bar, because if you're looking for a delicious snack and you don't want all the sugar and the calories and you need to try the best tasting protein bar ever, Built, you got to try this. Built Bars are amazing. They're healthy. They taste amazing. And you're not even going to realize that they're actually healthy because they're covered in 100% real dark chocolate, and they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. They taste like candy bars, but contain amazing macros with just 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, while bringing 17 grams of protein. And the best part is you can get them at Walmart, you can get them at Sam's Club, or you can get them delivered right to your door through built.com. Go to the pharmacy section of Walmart and grab a 4-bar box of cookies and cream bar, double chocolate bar, or the coconut puffs. Or if you're a Sam's Club, you can grab a 13-bar box of brownie batter puff and churro puff. And right now you can run to built.com. I suggest you run using your fingers and get in on the return of the peanut butter bar. That's built.com. Built different. You got to try this. Thanks for making Locked On Bucs first listeners, first view of the day today and every day. Every dayers tomorrow. Come on back, because James and I will have the next installment of our film watching series as I wipe the spit off my own lip. We are looking at the quarterback that the Buccaneers drafted. His name is offensive lineman Cody Mauch out of North Dakota State. So that's not a quarterback.
Not even a little bit. Not sure.
We will be looking at Cody Mauch. We will readdress the offensive line, and this will get a little bit interesting. We'll see how if we are synonymous, if we are seeing the offensive line breaking down the same way. We just got done talking about the quarterback that the Buccaneers are going to draft next year, according to Pro Football Focus's way too early mock draft. And real quick, just a couple of notes on the accuracy of these types of things, because James and I were pretty stunned when we went through this. Last year, Michael Renner did PFF's way too early mock draft for 2023. It was dated May 2nd, so almost a week from today last year, 1 year ago. He had the Buccaneers selecting number 31 overall, so obviously he projected a much better season for the Bucs than actually happened, and he thought they were going to take quarterback Devin Leary out of NC State, again, preparing for the departure of Tom Brady. Now, Devin Leary, you didn't hear his name draft weekend. Why? Because he's still playing college football. He's actually going to play for Kentucky this year as a grad transfer for the 2023 NCAA football season. But Michael Renner did have Bryce Young going number 1 overall, so that was accurate, although it was the Houston Texans, which it should have been if not for Lovie Smith. But Bucs fans, you've seen that story before. He did have C.J. Stroud as the second quarterback off the board. That was accurate. He had Alabama's Will Anderson as the top defender off the board. That was accurate. Bijan Robinson was his top running back. That was accurate. Here's what kind of really got me creeped out. He projected Myles Murphy to the Cincinnati Bengals at pick number 22. A year later, Myles Murphy went to the Cincinnati Bengals, pick number 28. I know it's 6 picks different, but I don't care. That's eerie to me. And 15 of the players that he mocked a year out landed in the first round of this year's NFL draft. So I call that a success.
Oh, absolutely. In a draft like we just had, getting basically half of the first rounders right knocked it out of the park, because how many times did we see players like Brian Branch and Will Levis, and we saw all these different names being mocked in the first round, and the first round went off the rails like almost immediately. Yeah. So a year out, not seeing some of these guys who we know eventually will emerge. We know there's going to be 1 or 2 quarterbacks that nobody is talking about right now that skyrocket, and all of a sudden they are slam dunk for sure, top 5 picks. All that stuff happens every single year. So no, that was pretty impressive for a way too early mock.
Yeah. And honestly, you look at a guy like Devin Leary out of NC State that he projected in the mock, who didn't leave college, right? That's a little bit harder to project, but you were mentioning he was one of the most highly recruited transfer players in the history of the transfer portal. So pretty strong to believe that Devin Leary probably would have gotten some first round buzz had he decided to come out of NC State. But anyway, again,
he dealt with an injury. He got hurt in October.
Yeah, he got injured
the rest of the season. So now he's going back for one more chance to prove that he's up there with the Drake Mays and the Caleb Williamses to be able to be one of those top picks. So smart decision on his part, to try to make up for that lost year.
Hendon Hooker empathizes 100%.
No doubt.
But that's next year. But again, before we get to next year, we got to get through this year. And the NFL has said that their targeted release date for the NFL schedule is this Thursday, May 11th. Now, again, that's the targeted release date, which means it may not actually come out that day. There's a lot of concerts going on. Ed Sheeran is doing some stuff. Taylor Swift, I heard, is doing some stuff. 50 Cent might be doing something. So
Yeah,
maybe some of those things are going to impact some decisions here. But we know this, regardless of when the schedule comes out, the Buccaneers are going to be hosting, of course, the Saints, Panthers, Falcons, boo, nobody cares, but also the Chicago Bears, the Detroit Lions, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Tennessee Titans, and the Philadelphia Eagles. They will be visiting, again, the Panthers, Saints, Falcons, nobody cares, the Green Bay Packers as well, the Minnesota Vikings, the Houston Texans, Indianapolis Colts, San Francisco 49ers, and the Buffalo Bills. So here's how we're going to do this. We're not going to project all 17 games. Instead, we're going to kind of hit the highlights here, James. Week 1, starting this whole thing off, who do you think the NFL schedule makers are going to send to Tampa or send Tampa to go play?
It will be the Chicago Bears visiting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 1. I don't have a reason for it. That just seemed like a week 1 kind of matchup. It's not super sexy.
Yeah.
The super sexy games are going to be, obviously, Kansas City plays on Thursday night. The NFC East is going to be in primetime on Sunday night and probably again on Monday night. And then you're going to have an AFC West team in primetime on Monday night after the NFC East team. For the usual Monday doubleheader, it'll probably be like Vegas and the Chargers as the second half of that doubleheader. So I was like, you know what? Why not Chicago? It's an old school Buccaneers rivalry.
Yeah.
Justin Fields can get smacked around by Shaq Barrett and Kalijah Kancey, and it just works.
Yeah, definitely old NFC Central rivalry, right?
Yeah, blue.
Just like the Battle of the Bay. And that's what I have predicted for week 1 is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading to Lambeau to play in the thawed out tundra of Green Bay and to welcome Jordan Love to the ranks of starting quarterbackdom. And here's why. Because the NFL loves storylines, right? Well, let's be completely honest. This Buccaneers Green Bay game, not going to be as sexy as it has been in years past, right? So the sexiest you can make this is 2 teams who are both moving on from Hall of Fame quarterbacks with new quarterbacks that both need to prove themselves for different reasons. You can't wait on that. You get to like week 4. I mean, who knows what's going to happen? Like Baker Mayfield could have 16 touchdowns or 16 interceptions. Jordan Love might have, pulled a VY and just disappeared from the entire franchise. So you got to get it in early. You got to get that storyline early. It's week 1. People are going to watch anyway. So it doesn't have to be like the most amazing storyline, but it gives you a reason to give it probably a 4:25 kickoff and give people a reason to stick around after their wings have gotten cold. Now let's fast forward to the end of the season, James. How do you see the Buccaneers wrapping up their regular season schedule in week 18?
They open up at home. They end at home facing the Atlanta Falcons for like the 3rd time in 4 years or the 4th time in 5 years.
That is common.
Seems to be a pretty solid prediction that Atlanta will be the opponent in week 18.
I also have the Buccaneers starting on the road and ending on the road. I did not do that on purpose, to be quite honest with you, but it happened the way that it happened. And I've got them going to Carolina to end the season because here's the bottom line. One of 2 things is going to happen. Either the Bucs or the Panthers will be in playoff contention. I don't think they both will be. I think one or the other will be, or they're both going to be completely eliminated. If they're completely eliminated, you kind of want to throw away the game anyway. You just kind of do whatever you do with it. But if either of them are in contention, you've got the defending division champs, you've got the number 1 overall pick. The storylines write themselves. James, most likely primetime home game.
The Philadelphia Eagles, because number 1, they're the defending NFC champions. Number 2, they're in the NFC East. Number 3, the Bucs home opponents stink. And so this is the most appealing possibility for a home game to be thrown into primetime.
I'm going versus Carolina. So I just went at Carolina to end the season, going at home against Carolina. Again, number 1 overall pick, defending NFC South champions. I'm calling this a Thursday nighter, honestly. That's probably how that's going to go down. Most likely primetime away game. James, who do you got?
I will go at the Indianapolis Colts. And again, this is a Thursday nighter. The Colts may not be very good. The Bucs may not be very good. but it's a game that they can throw on Thursday night, get each of them their guaranteed primetime game for the season. And you get Anthony Richardson, the superior Florida quarterback between the two teams on national television. You got Baker, you got, it's the third time or the third year in a row that they will be at Indianapolis. Now, granted, last year was a preseason game, but there's a little bit of intrigue there, I guess. And of course, it also gives Al Michaels an opportunity to talk about the Peyton Manning primetime comeback in Tampa, because these two teams can't play each other without bringing up that comeback.
It was a good comeback, though.
My
most likely away primetime game is in New Orleans, and I'm calling this like week 2 or 3. Like, this might be week 2 Sunday Night Football, because what you do if you're in the NFL is you give the Saints a softball pitch. I don't know what their full schedule looks like, but you give them the easiest team you think they have on their schedule for week 1. They come in there and you hope that they completely demolish whoever that team is, because then they come in Sunday Night Football and Derek Carr's career is revitalized. New Orleans is back, and now they're going to unseat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers post Tom Brady. Devin White's going to come in there, and Baker Mayfield gets thrown into the middle of this chaotic non-rivalry, according to Saints fans. It could turn out beautiful, or it could turn out horrendous, and it really depends on how you want that game to go on, whether or not you classify it either way. James, which game do you want to see the most?
I most want to see the game against the Detroit Lions, and I will tell you why. Everybody is all over the Lions. Oh, the Lions are going to win the division. Oh, the Lions are actually a contender. The Lions they're building something special. No, they're not. No, they're not. They're going to end up under 500 because they're the Lions. And you're really going to trust Jared Goff to have back-to-back good seasons? It's not happening. So I'm very much looking forward to the Detroit Lions hype to come crashing down and imploding on everyone. Bucs by 20.
I like it. I am one of the people saying that the Lions could win the NFC North, but that's as far as I go on this. Okay, I don't know. Miss me with the rest of that stuff. The game I would most like to see is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting the Chicago Bears, because what's better than one Ohio State quarterback playing in Tampa? It's 2 Ohio State quarterbacks playing in Tampa. But James, we are a week removed from the NFL draft, and there are some new power rankings that have come out, and they hate the Buccaneers because everybody hates the Buccaneers again. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Bucs.
Wrapping things up here on a Monday edition of the Locked On Bucs podcast. And Dan Hansis, our favorite guy, he's a big fan of the show. He dropped his post-draft power rankings, and the Buccaneers slid down the list quite a bit. Now, the movement was based off of his post-free agency rankings, not the end of season rankings. So these have evolved a little bit throughout the offseason. His top riser was Baltimore, jumping 6 spots from 13 to 7. And his biggest slide basically was Carolina, who dropped 7 spots from 18 to 25. Now, the Buccaneers were 24th prior to the draft, and Hansis now has them 29th, ahead of only the Washington Commanders, Houston Texans, and Arizona Cardinals. Hansis says, quote, "The Buccaneers are serious about this Baker Mayfield thing, huh? Tampa Bay chose not to address the quarterback position with its 8 picks in the 2023 NFL draft, setting up a summertime camp battle between Mayfield, the number 1 overall pick turned journeyman, and former second-round choice Kyle Trask. It's not a situation that inspires an enormous amount of confidence, but it's worth remembering that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are still around to help things along as much as they can. First-round pick Kalijah Kancey continues a trend in Tampa Bay, becoming the 3rd defensive tackle in 6 years to be selected with the Bucs' top choice. They have a type." End quote. David, your reaction to Hansis poo-pooing the fact that they're sticking with Baker Mayfield?
Yeah. So here's my problem with post-draft grades and power rankings. And I've already said this on the show. I'm going to say it again anyway. Every day is just bear with me. I'll make it shorter this time around. Basically, what we're exposing here is how much you agree or disagree with the team's moves. Because here's the thing, and this is why you pointed out that these power rankings are shifts from post free agency. Well, what happened in free agency? What happened in free agency or leading up to free agency is Tom Brady retired. The Buccaneers got Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask and Dave Canales added to their offense. That's what led to the 24th overall ranking in the first place. Like this 29th ranking is post all that. So basically what Dan is saying is, I didn't want you to stick with Baker. Well, Dan, it's great. But if you were going to rank the Buccaneers 29th because Baker Mayfield was a projected starting quarterback, you should have done it during the free agency power ranking shift. What this tells me is that you didn't pay attention. You didn't understand that this was a real thing. We've been saying it. Pewter Report's been saying it. Tampa Bay Times has been saying it. Jenna Lane on ESPN has been saying it. Loose Cannons has been saying it. JC Cornell's been tweeting it. Like, this Baker Mayfield being the starting quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is not news. All it is not what Dan Hanses wanted them to do. Therefore, in this world, they are the 29th team in the NFL. It's just like the Carolina Panthers, who had the number 1 overall pick and traded away DJ Moore in the last rankings, and then they spend the number 1 overall pick on supposedly the best quarterback in the draft, and they somehow slide in the power rankings. I don't know. It doesn't really make any sense to me, other than basically Dan just doesn't like what the NFC South is doing. And the last thing I will say to Dan is they did not draft 3 straight defensive tackles, because all of those draft picks play outside linebacker or defensive end.
Here's my thing. And look, I was steering the Locked On Bucs Baker ship. You were not on board, before it happened.
I was smuggled on board against my will with my hands duct taped behind my back.
Baker Mayfield is not a journeyman quarterback. He was a guy who was drafted number 1 overall to a team that had 0 wins the year before he arrived. 0. Within 3 years, he had them in the playoffs. Then he tries to play through injury because an injured Baker was a better plan than anybody they had backing him up. And it didn't go so well. And the Browns used that as an excuse to completely destroy the quarterback market in a trade for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
So Baker gets shipped off to a team that is an even bigger dumpster fire than Cleveland in the Carolina Panthers, and he didn't really get a fair shake there. He arrived during training camp. Okay. So then they let him go, and the Rams pick him up. That's not a journeyman. A journeyman is Josh McCown. A journeyman is Ryan Fitzpatrick. That is not who Baker Mayfield is. And like him or not, he's an okay, pretty solid quarterback. I'm not sitting here pounding the table saying he's going to be top 10, but he's got as good a chance as any to be the best quarterback in the NFC South. And just because Dan Hansis doesn't like him doesn't matter. I should put out my own power rankings of people that do NFL power rankings. And guess what, Dan? You just slid 11 spots because I don't like your assessment of what Baker Mayfield is or who the Buccaneers draft. So sorry about your luck. You just slid from 12th to 23rd. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, well, I mean, the second you refer to Joe Tryon-Schwenk as the defensive tackle, you pretty much lose the credibility for that article. We all make mistakes. I'm not gonna say or pretend I'm perfect and I never have a mistake or call Cody Mock or anything like that. So we'll temper that a little bit. But bottom line is what the bottom line is. Look, I'll give you a hot take. The Seattle Seahawks, specifically Dave Canales, wanted Baker Mayfield last year. They wanted a trade for Baker Mayfield. The Los Angeles Rams ended up with Baker Mayfield after, like you said, he goes to Carolina in a very desperate coaching situation. Like Matt Rule basically knew either I win this year or I'm fired. So why not take a flyer on a Baker Mayfield, a number 1 overall draft pick? And then when that didn't work out immediately, well, crap. Let me flip over to this other first round draft pick quarterback, Sam Darnold. Well, crap. Maybe, I don't know, PJ Walker. Is there another St. Louis Battlehawks quarterback available? Like Matt Rule was basically just saying like, all right, this quarterback didn't work. Let's do this one. This quarterback didn't work. Let's do this one. There was no rhyme or reason to this thing. It was just, let me find a guy and hope that I can save my job. Los Angeles was the only place that really gave him any type of semblance of, I don't want to say security, really, but stability maybe, right? And I'll tell you right now, here's my hot take. if Baker Mayfield had gotten traded to the Seattle Seahawks in the first place, he's their starting quarterback this year.
Yeah.
If Matt Stafford, so that's a what if could have happened. If Matt Stafford didn't have a $42 million dead cap figure this year, I think Baker Mayfield's starting quarterback in Los Angeles. Honestly. And you're right. I wasn't on the Baker Mayfield train, but I will say this. I would have preferred Derek Carr. I'm not going to shy away from that. But if I'm putting these two guys on the sliding scale, Baker Mayfield is barely underneath Derek Carr. Like, he's so far close underneath Derek Carr, he could tie Derek Carr's cleats. Like, he's not that far away from him. And depending on system fits, scheme fits, weapon usage, all that stuff, by the end of the season, he could actually be above him.
And he's like a tenth of the price. All right.
He's a tenth of the price.
David, before we get out of here, we do need to announce our NFL draft giveaway winner. And this winner was someone who sent in an email draft question on a WTSP Wednesday episode of the podcast. So, Gabe, congratulations on being chosen for our giveaway. Go ahead and email us at lockedonbuckspodcast@gmail.com to let us know where to send your prize. And Gabe, I hope you're an everydayer. I hope you listen all the way through the end, because if Gabe doesn't claim his prize this week, then we're going to go ahead and redraw, and we're going to announce a new winner on Monday's show. So, Gabe, this is your one and only warning. You got to email us and let us know that you heard that you won the giveaway, and we will get that prize sent out to you ASAP. But we want to thank each and every one of you for making Locked On Bucs your first listen or view every day. And for our everydayers, on tomorrow's episode, we're going to continue our NFL draft class deep dive, film study, whatever you want to call it. We're going to talk a little bit Cody Mauch. Of course, you can send in your questions, your thoughts, your ideas to lockedonbuckspodcast@gmail.com or DM us on Twitter at LockedOnBucs. Check out David's work over on BucsGameDay.com. Check out mine at BucsNation.com. Follow everything on Twitter at LockedOnBucs, at JYarcho_Bucs, and at DHarrison82. Hope you all have an absolutely outstanding day. Stay safe, stay healthy, fire the cannons. We thank you so much for joining us right here on Locked On Bucs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.